we talk about the word retirement is just a terrible word. It like almost lulls us to sleep because there's no accountability that's tied to it, retirement. But if we started calling retirement future cash flow planning, like I'm doing this for future cash flow, you would start seeing things radically different. I don't want to go on a tangent here, but I talked to somebody who was in a very unique financial situation, and I saw that they were putting their money into a 401k. And it's very clear we can't give financial advice, and I'm not investing, like I'm not giving you investment advice, but I just educated them on like the 4% rule, which is probably should be called the 3% rule. And I just wanted them to know, like, okay, like I understand that you're getting this match and all this stuff, and we can talk about rates of return all day long, but do you actually understand like the end game plan here? And they didn't. So I just educated them, and I was like, like $1 million, which you're not on the track to get anywhere close to having $1 million, by the way. If you had $1 million in this account, it would produce around 30 to 40,000 in 30 years time period. So it's like 40,000 today is not that much money. 30 years from now. So I just wanted them to start thinking. I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to beat up anything. I want you to understand, like, what is the purpose? What is the result of why we're doing what we're doing? And I find that if we just get people to get really clear and like, this is why I'm doing it because of this, and this is how it's going to work, you're so much farther ahead than just being like, I'm doing this because that's what I've been told to do, and I'm just follow the directions kind of deal. And so I think if we just even change retirement to future cash flow planning, our mindset changes, the accountability changes, because now we can put a metric. We're planning for future cash flow. So we can debate all day long, what's the risk associated with that? What's the future cash flow look like? But retirement has no accountability tied to it because literally people don't even understand it.
Not only that, look at retirement just as a whole. Like we've literally been told and taught and led to believe that retirement is this magic fictional day where we turn in our papers, we're done, we just ride off into the sunset and all is good. You know what retirement really is for those that just stop working and just go off and do it. Some of the folks I know, they golf for maybe half a year and then they kind of burn out on that. Then they're trying to find their path. And if they don't find their path, they lose the purpose of life. And in the facts, folks, I'm not making this up, are that they die way too soon.
Yeah.
All the time. The thing that we mentioned earlier about hope and about purpose and all that stuff. And I talked about that movie and that study in Harvard, because you said, I don't know if I can live up to that. Of course you can. And of course everybody else can, if you believe you can. And, when belief kind of falters, you go to hope. And that is sincerely the most powerful thing on earth. So, but also don't let hope like paint a false picture for your future, because you can't hope your way to wealth. It's a powerful thing. It keeps you going, but you cannot hope yourself to wealth. You can't hope yourself to future income that will be enough to support your family and your future families. Like, listen, like when I talk to people, I don't talk to them about just making enough money for their life. I talk to them about making enough money so that when they're gone, their family, their kids get to live a better life than they did. And then their kids can live a better life, but not just live a better life themselves. I think that's selfish. People ask me all the time, Chris, when's enough? Referring to money. And my answer is always the same. There's no amount that's enough. And it's not because I want more or need more. I already don't need more. It's because there's too many other people out there that need help. Too many other animals out there that can't fend for themselves that need help. So when somebody says, when's enough? Well, when, child trafficking's done. Okay, when suffering is done, when there's not a single homeless or hungry person on earth, when there's not an animal that is ever threatened, when there's not tigers being killed or elephants, being killed or rhinos having their tusks cut off, when everybody has enough, that's when that's enough. And the answer to that is it will never be enough. So when you take yourself out of the equation of building wealth and you make building wealth about solving somebody else's problem,
that's good.
You will absolutely find that you'll always have more wealth because you changed your focus. It's a universal law. You've changed your focus to giving. Okay. Yep. And when you give or solve somebody else's problem is what I like to call it in business, you then the universe can do nothing other than return back to you. You've heard this all, folks. Like when people make money, they get to a point where they can't stop making money. It's not luck. It's not chance. It's not hope. It's because they understood or tapped into something none of us really fully comprehend, but it is true. It's like like gravity, right? If you go to the top of the building, we all know the law of gravity. If you jump off your building, you're going to go splat. There's nothing that's going to change that. Don't try to beat laws. And that is a law of the universe. So when we're talking about money, it's such a simple formula. It really is. You want to become stupid wealthy, folks. And this is what Caleb and I are going to talk to you about. All you need to do is understand the problem that you're solving for somebody else. And when you solve a problem for somebody else, your problem instantly is solved. And, when we talk about the stock market and everything else, like one of the big problems I have taken on, and I know you also have, is, there's so many people being literally right now let off a cliff. I think you and I both are on the same mindset that the markets are certainly done. We are at an all-time high, and we can only go down from here. All the signs, all the facts, all the reports show the exact same thing, except for when you watch the news and you listen to Kramer, who says, oh, everything's going to be fine. We're going to soft land. No, we're not. The markets are going to go down. The economy is going to soften, and you need to be on the right side of that. So building wealth is really just, or is really right now more of a component of preserving, protecting what you currently have.
Can I play devil's advocate with you?
Please.
So like, even if it wasn't, even if the market was going to go up 12% each and every year, I still wouldn't change my song or dance or what I'm trying to stand for, because it's like, even I'm just playing. I tend to agree with you. You look at the next 30 years, we're not going to we have to understand economics, and we have to understand, but like with printing of money, and I do see a world where, the stock market may continue to go up, but like, that doesn't necessarily mean that their theory is right. That's the whole point that I'm trying to make, is like, why do we, I loved what you said about solving someone else's problem. Like that's so key. It's like, if we focus on number one, like how like money, cash flow comes from value. Value comes from serving somebody. That's why I'm a huge fan of capitalism. That's because at the end of the day, when money is flowing, that means there's an exchange where a party is like, yes, I received more value, and that's why I'm giving. That's why it's a deal. If it wasn't a deal, I wouldn't be paying you right now for the exchange. And so I want us to just take that concept and bring it to every part of our life. Because what I find is, in some areas we get it, we make money, but then we turn off our brain into like what we should do with that tool. And so, I agree with you. But even if someone was like, the market's going to average, it's like, okay, what's the point? What value exchange is that happening? Even if the market was continuing to grow, like, why is that? Is that just because of money laundering that the government's doing by printing more money? It's like what? And then on the back end of it, it's like, okay, let's assume that it continues to grow. Like, what's the end result 30 years from now? Are you even happy that you're locking up your money for the next 20, 30 years? Like that, those are the kind of things that I'm like agreeing with you, and I'm even coming in a different direction, because I'm like, even if you were wrong, and even if the market didn't crash, is it still an area that we want to lock up our money in? That's the question I have. And then it's like, if you understand that the fact that the next 30 years aren't going to look like the last 30 years is a whole nother reason to why you might want to pump the brakes and do something different.
Yeah, I agree. I think, the folks listening to this episode, some people think everything's going to be okay. Some people think, the next Great Depression is going to come. So we got two extremes on both sides.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, it doesn't matter which extreme happens, your tune, your story stays the same. And I love that. So let's dive down that. And really, folks, what we're talking about here is nothing new. This has been around for hundreds of years. I mean, you could trace it back. I did a video talking about the origins of what we're going to talk about. Commonly heard of is privatized banking, back in the day, or the infinite banking concept pioneered by the late R. Nelson Nash, who literally paved the way for everything that both of us do here. But really, it comes down to, let's just assume the markets are going to continue to just go gangbusters, because the Fed's going to keep printing trillions of dollars and keep the market artificially inflated. But we won't even go there. Let's just assume the markets are going to go good. A lot of people would say, when they hear, either of us talk, and I love your section in your book about this, people are always like, well, why would I put money into this privatized banking, this specially designed and engineered whole life, when I can put money in the S&P 500 and make 12%? Okay, so that's a relevant question, right? Most of you listening would say, yeah, why would I put money in a specially designed whole life that might pay me between 2 and 5% versus putting money in a S&P 500 ETF that pays me 12%? And just for the record, folks, S&P 500 is not at 12% and doesn't average 12%. We're just hypothetically using a number just so you have a high number to look at, right? So some people would say, yeah, I'd take money from my bank account and I would put money into the S&P 500. That seems like the better choice. If I knew it was going to do 12, that would be the better choice than putting it into the whole life, paying me 2 to 5. Okay. Hold on a second. What if instead of doing the S&P 500, you took the money and you put it into the whole life first. And then once the whole life was funded, you then took money from the whole life and you put it in the S&P 500. Is there anything different? I mean, we'll leave this to the audience. Is there anything different about that? You just changed where the money went first, and then you took the money from the specially designed whole life. We'll just call that your privatized banking system, and then you put the money into the S&P 500. You took a loan from your policy and put it into the S&P 500. Are you indeed still making 12% in the S&P? Yeah, if the S&P made that. And then are you still indeed making the 2 to 5% in the whole life, depending on what year you're in? Yeah, you effectively are. What's the differential in the middle? What the insurance company charges you to borrow your money. So
Yep.
when you pencil it and you run the mathematics, and this is something I've gone deep into, Caleb, I don't know if you've seen it, but I have literally gone to great lengths to mathematically prove all the concepts we talk about day in and day out. Mathematically prove it so that there's no more, well, I don't know if that happens. There are no more, people saying, well, that whole life would never do that. I just mathematically solve for that. But in your book, you said, your book is called The And Asset. You talk about exactly that. This isn't, a this or that asset. This is a this and that. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. And I actually want to, I will want to talk about something that I think will be a really, really good discussion for us to talk about and maybe even disagree on. And I think there's benefits of saying, hey, we as friends and like people in the space, like we can have conversations that are nuanced. And here's what I'll say is you're 100% right. Anytime someone says I can make a greater rate of return, it's like they're comparing life insurance to an investment, and life insurance is not an investment. So that just tells me like, oh, all they care about is the rate of return. So then we talk about like you could fund a life insurance policy and then take a loan against that life insurance policy, put that money in. And really there's only two big differences to that is the cost that the insurance company is charging you to borrow. And then usually in the first year or two, you don't have all the money that you put in.
Correct.
Versus like if your money was in a savings account, you would have more quote unquote liquidity. And so then the question goes, this is a common question I'm sure you and I both get. Caleb, if I'm only going to earn, let's say 3, 4, maybe 5% internal rate of return, like actual rate of return in my policy, why would I take a 5, 6% loan somewhere else? So it's, in other words, do we arbitrage using infinite banking? And I actually don't like, if it's just the cash on cash, you don't arbitrage. Let's just hypothetically say you only make 3% in your policy and you're charged 5%. You're not arbitraging. And then people are saying, well, Caleb, why then do you recommend this? You would actually be better mathematically putting your money in a savings account. And this is what it tells me. They have zero value of the benefits that life insurance gives you to your financial life. They don't there's zero value in the death benefit. There's zero value in the chronic benefit riders. There's zero value in the fact that it's when set up and used properly, there's tax benefits that allow our money to grow tax deferred, can be used tax-free, gets passed on income tax-free. There's zero benefits that come from like, oh, having life insurance in a future portfolio is like bonds on steroids. And there may be benefits that unlock other things. And so what I like to just tell people is if all you care about is arbitrage, infinite banking is probably not like, and this is where we can disagree, but when I look at the math, whole life insurance, which you and I are both a fan of because we're not able to manipulate the numbers like some other insurances out there. It's like, no, you really over the next 30 years may or may not be able to arbitrage. But if all you care is arbitraging your cash, don't do the strategy. But if you understand life insurance as like a actual amazing asset that literally makes 10, 15, 20%, like not 20%, like 20 benefits better. If you understand that, you'd want to put as much money as you possibly could into life insurance and use it as an and, not because of the quote unquote arbitrage, because of all the other benefits. And when you include all the other benefits, it's like crazy arbitrage because you're getting that. So I want you to ask questions. I want us to have a discussion on this because when we talk about arbitrage, like I do believe there's arbitrage. I just believe there's arbitrage when you add in all the other benefits. But if you only care about one number, it's the same people that say life insurance is a bad investment. I'll give it to them. It's like, if all we care about is that, buy term and invest the difference. If that's what you want to do, great. But like, who's going to have a better result over the next 30 years? Me, because I understand that there's more than just rate of return. Rate of return is one benefit. It's important. we got to look at all kinds of other things because you can't spend a rate of return. And that's, you can't, cash flow is not necessarily created based off a rate of return. There's value is not just necessarily created. The rate of return is one element that matters, but a lot of times we put it on a pedestal and forget all the other things in our life. And the last thing I'll say, because you got me on a tangent here, is like a cell phone. This is the example that I use. We all have smartphones. I would bet you majority of people watching this video has a smartphone. Does anyone say to you, oh, well, smartphone's a bad investment because I don't know the rate of return that my smartphone gives me? No, I've never heard that. And yet I will spend, like, I don't care how much money I have to spend per month. Like, the smartphone allows me to do business. It's my alarm clock. It's my white noise machine. It's my maps. It's my timer. I get to call. I get to text. We get to do massive business opportunities on a smartphone. I don't look at it as an investment. I just look at it as an essential thing for my business. That's the kind of how I look at life insurance. I don't look at it as like a invest. I just look at it as an essential part of building my wealth. And it's like, because it's hard to put a value on my smartphone because it does so many things. The same thing, I think of the same thing as life insurance. It's like, don't even try to put it in the same investment category. It does so much. That's why it's a foundational asset for me. And then we could talk about what we should do with it afterwards. So that's